This episode of Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation is brought to you in part by Clay Boykin Life and Business Coaching, because we all get stuck at times. For more information, visit clayboykin.com. By Janelli Bean, for fun and engaging children's books with cute and colorful characters. For more information, visit janellibean.com. And by Wise Owl Organizing, simply set up for you. Organizing consulting and clarity coaching, virtual or in person. For more information, visit wiseowlorganizing.com.
Hello world, it's me, Dennis, and welcome to Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation. I'm here with Erika Barker. Hello, Erika.
Hello there, Dennis. Thank you so much for having me on. It is a pleasure to meet you, and hello to all your viewers out there.
Everybody, and your viewers, because this is going to go on your LinkedIn and TikTok, because I met you first on TikTok when I began watching some of your short educational pieces on science, and the curiosity that you have and the ability that you do of taking what would be a deeply complex subject and then bringing it to the level, and you're not dumbing it down, you're actually smartening it up. Richard Feynman had that same ability to be able to take this enormously difficult subject and put it into terms that we can understand. And I want to thank you for that, and the abilities that you've been able to do for all of us to understand electricity, the digital world, to understand the complexities of the computer chip and all the work. So thank you for that for all of us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's definitely my pleasure.
Now, did you get, I want to ask about this, because you got into the idea of teaching had to come early for you, right?
Well, specifically, it came, so I was in the military. I was a combat photojournalist. I did that for 5 years, and I learned the art of storytelling. My mentor, Bobby McCrill, he was my boss, and, typical salty sailor. I was in the Navy, and he taught me the art of telling a story with photos. Later, he was killed by an IED in Iraq, and he's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about telling a good story. And I'm going to get back to storytelling in just a minute, because I think it's really critical to our conversation today. Anyways, after the military, I went back to school, got my master's degree, and the school was like, hey, we've got to hire somebody with experience because we're starting this journalism program. And they have to have at least a master's degree and, real world experience. You are the only person that we know of. Right? This happened right when I graduated. And I came aboard, and one of my wonderful mentors, David Painter, who teaches at Rollins College, doctorate from University of Florida, he was the one who took away all these fears that I had of standing in front of a classroom, teaching in front of students, being confident in what I say, breaking very complicated subjects down to something that's easy to digest. He has a lot to do with a lot of the teaching methods that I use. A lot of those other teaching methods that I brought into the classroom were because I wasn't the best student when I was in high school. Math was a very difficult subject for me.
Well, who were you in high school? Who was this? Can you talk about Erika in high school and who you thought you were and what was going on? What year did you graduate from high school?
Okay, so I graduated in the year 2000.
Okay.
And in high school, I would say my 9th and 10th grade year, I was a C student. And I was more into the world of computers, because in the mid 90s, this was when the internet it was still the wild, wild west, but we went from BBS systems to online systems like America Online, CompuServe, Prodigy, to getting into the full scope of the internet. A lot of people didn't really explore the internet because they were more into AOL, Prodigy, and even prior to that, it was something called Gopher. It was like these little directories, but it was pretty intimidating because it was just ran by colleges at that point. And around 1996 was when people started getting out of that whole entire AOL world and getting in, downloading Netscape Navigator. I forget some of the other ones at that time.
Absolutely. Those were
learning.
the early ones to be able to
Yeah.
get in there. AOL, yeah, all the things that we had at that time.
And I was addicted to this. And one of the things I wanted to know is, how do I create a web page? Well, in that time, there was no easy, it wasn't like Squarespace or Wix where you just do, or even WordPress for that matter. It was, you had to learn HTML. And, back in those days, we really never had cascading style sheets. It was, you had to code with using tables and, using animated GIFs. And from there, that inspired me to learn Adobe Photoshop. And I went more of the art direction. One of my best friends, Chris Jones, who's I've been best friends with him since we've been 8 years old. He's the one who got me into the world of computers and the internet. And now he works up here in New York as a DevOps, working with big data. And he still inspires me till this day. But something that we have is we actually like to collect old computers and revisit the times that we had as a kid with the old original OS or something. But together, we would just do all these crazy fun projects. Now, I went the artist direction, the creative direction, because programming and math were very difficult for me. He was more of an analytical thinker. Those things came very easy to him. I remember he had one of these Texas Instrument calculators, and he was able to program it to where he could just glide through any math class in college. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're such a genius. And I always wish I had that. But the problem that I found in school was that my creative brain, the way my brain specifically thought, it was very difficult to connect with a lot of these subjects. And the reason why, which I learned much later on in life, is because a lot of teachers in the educational system, we know about rote learning, where it's just memorization verbatim, but they don't start at the root of something. And at the same time, there's a lot of other variables that I like to get into, such as how you tell a story, how you speak, when you choose to hold a pause, how you're moving your hands, expression. These are all really important things in storytelling and connecting with the students. How I'm using my cadence to go up and go down. When you're really good at this, I believe that you can teach the most complex subjects in the world to the most stubborn of students, like myself when I was in high school. And I just never had this. And I wanted to create a system that would reach the younger version of Erika in high school, even though I was teaching students who are working on their master's degrees in both journalism and public relations. Now, I've had when I was in high school, of course, there was the computers, and there's also car stereos. It was my mentor, Kent Keith, who taught me how electricity works, what relays are, how transistors work, how to build a speaker box, how to leverage geometry to understand, the pressure in that speaker box, to where you had the right size volume of that speaker box. And it's through real world applications where I was able to start grasping these very difficult subjects that I could not grasp in the classroom. And that's kind of in a nutshell who I was in high school.
That's amazing. And had you picked up a camera at that time? Because your visual artistry is extraordinary. When I look at how you paint with light, uh, It's just amazing. So had you picked up a camera then?
Well, I did have a camera, and but when I first started with film, I was cursed. Every time I took a shot, I would get developed at Eckerd's, which was prior that before it was CVS, it was Eckerd's in Florida, and that's where I grew up. Every single shot was like just a blur or something that was overexposed. I just could not get it. And then I got a digital camera. When they first came out, it was a Kodak 2 megapixel camera, I believe, and that's kind of what started it. But I never had the bug yet. What created the bug was I was doing some websites on the side. And during those times in the early 2000s, people like their websites to look uh, like a cave, or maybe like a telephone or a fax machine. They liked it to look like things. Forgive me, I think the correct term for that design is skimiomorphic design. And
Lovely.
yeah, so I think that was if I'm wrong, forgive me. It's sometimes words I say words wrong, but that was the way it was in the early 2000s. And what the way we would do that is we would actually go and cut out little parts of pictures
Hmm.
and put these all together, make it all black and white, ensure that the shading all matches, and then color it in color it in Photoshop, and then that was the interface. And then you had the content caked right in the center. So in order to get all these different parts, we had to go to stock libraries. And the problem with that was it would take you forever sometimes just for something simple. It's like, I just want a picture of concrete or a brick wall. Why do I have to go and pay for this and spend all this time? I can go out here and just take a picture of and get the textures that I need or the instrument that I need. And I found a friend who was selling a Minolta Damage 5i, I believe that was the name of the camera. And it was a great camera. It was a great starter camera. And that was how I kind of got started in that world. But I never understood the art of storytelling with a camera, like the powerful photojournalist who, like Eddie Adams, until I met Bobby McCrill, my LPO, my lead petty officer in the Navy, who taught me how to tell a story.
Oh, and tell me about the idea of joining the Navy and to be a photojournalist. So you do this, you have to contract for 4 years, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, there are several reasons, and it was 5 years I was in.
5 years.
That's a funny story, reason why it was 5 years. So when I was in high school, my senior year, I got my first job working in the web development office. And the way I got that job was I was actually on the front page of the newspaper. I was meeting Jeb Bush and talking about technology. And this was when Jeb was going around promoting his brother to become president. And, I was just sitting there. I was just a bus, a bus boy, bus girl, just cleaning his table up. And he came over and talked to me, and we just started talking. And the newspaper was there, snapped a picture of us. A journalist started talking to me, and just was really fascinated with what I was doing with websites. And so was Jeb, and Jeb gave me his business card, and we still stay in touch until this day. I don't quite agree with all of his politics, but we still stay in touch, and consider him um, a very good person to start off like this journey that I went on in life.
Sure, a catalyst.
Yes, exactly. Now, the problem with when you put a teenager on the front page of a newspaper and all of a sudden everybody knows them, and that teenager just happens to be an only child in the center of their parents' universe, is that teenager gets an ego very quickly and becomes incredibly hard-headed. And that was my case. It wasn't too good. So it became very hard-headed, and I was hard-headed because at first I went and got my associate's degree, and I was hard-headed through the whole entire ride of getting my associate's degree, just constantly debating with the professors and I knew more than they did. Very, very cocky. And
One of the important things of youth, because that's as I look at the innovators and the people that have made a difference in the world, that's an important stage to go through. So it's very important stage to be able to believe that we know it all, and then to get into the humility of learning that there is more to learn and more for us to be able to do. So that's a very natural stage.
yeah, it's kind of like a tilted, I guess, like if you can imagine like a tilted hourglass where it's like you think you know so much at the beginning, and then like the more you come to, then you come to this point in the center where you realize you know nothing at all.
And then
And
begin.
then the desire to start learning more about the world starts to grow and grow and grow from there until we, perish and are no more. But it was my very good graphic design mentor who was my high school teacher, Tom Natalino. And my gosh, this man is the most wonderful mentor in my life and a very dear friend. He said, buddy, you're very talented, but you've got to learn to be humble. You've got such a terrible problem, and it's going to cause you so many hiccups in life. And one day I got fired from my job because I was an arrogant, egotistical person who, just was not getting along with my colleagues. I was not a team player. And I was watching Top Gun on TNT one night. I was like, man, maybe my mentor is right. Maybe I need to learn how to work with the team. Maybe I need to be humble. And so the next day I went to the Air Force office. Air Force guy was a complete dud. He was like talking like, oh man, yeah, we can do something. I was like, oh, it's not for me. And then I walk outside. I was like, well, looks like the military is not for me. And there's this Navy recruiter hanging out there smoking a cigarette. They're like, so how'd the Air Force work out for you? It's like, they work out. It's not for me. It's like, well, what do you want to do? Well, this is what I do. It's like, why don't you come in my office and let's see what we can do? So I go inside, say, yeah, we can do all this. And, the Navy doesn't go to war, and you're going to be awesome. You're going to be so happy here. And I was like, oh man, that's so great. And it's like, oh man, look at this. I see that you've got some college education. You're eligible for a $5,000 bonus. $5,000 to somebody my age at that time was a lot of money. So I was like, oh.
What year was this?
I think that this was in 2003.
All right, 2003. We've just gone into Iraq, right?
Right.
So we just invaded after 9/11. It is 2001. Then 2003, we just gone into Iraq, and so you're all right. So just to ground it for all of us in history.
Yeah. So yeah, we've gone into Iraq, and this one of the pitches of the Navy is like, oh, the Army and the Marines go into Iraq. We don't go into Iraq. I was like, oh wow, you're wearing a uniform. I trust you. You are a trustable person. So, I go into this thing called MEPS where they process us and determine if we're worthy. And, forgive me, this is the part where I signed for the bonus. And the guy who's sitting there is, it's a guy, he's in full uniform. It's like, yeah, just sign this. And his hand is covering all the fine print. And I'm like, yes, okay, I'm going to get $5,000. And then I get to boot camp. And this is a completely different story. The niceness, the kindness is over. And there's this guy who's just yelling at me. He's like, come here. I see you signed up for 5 years. I'm like, I never signed up for no 5 years. He's like, yeah, you did. You wanted this $5,000 bonus, didn't you? No, that's because I had college education. Well, you should have read the print. And I was like, my heart sank, and I was so depressed my first week of boot camp because that broke me. I was broken before boot camp even started.
Had you signed up for, I mean, was it a contract to say, okay, I'm going into photojournalism and that I'm going to go through this as a path? Did you have that as your path from your recruiter?
No. I actually went in originally as a lithographer, but during this time, the Navy was combining what the jobs were called rates, and you had the lithography, draftsman. So lithography was like you run prints and you print things and do designs. Yeah. Draftsmen's the ones who draw. Then you have the JOs, which are the journalists, and then you have the PHs, which are photographers' mates. That rate was all filled up, but it didn't matter anyways, because the Navy decided to combine all those jobs into one job, and they called it mass communication specialist. And that's what I ended up going into the Navy as, was an MC, mass communication specialist. So yeah, when we say like I was E6 or an E5, that means that I was a second class petty officer, a mass communications second class petty officer.
Yeah.
So yeah, I ended up there, and eventually I ended up at Combat Camera, where I started learning from my mentors. And I was very stubborn, and they had a way of getting the arrogance out of me. And that's where I built my humility. That's where the Erika of the day was built, because they had to tear me down, all that arrogance down, and rebuild me from the ground up. And I had wonderful mentors who taught me everything from being a better person, being a better team player, being a better leader, being a better contributor, and thinking about your team before you think about yourself.
Well, I mean, it goes, not to take this on a rabbit trail, but one of my passions is the idea that if we were to have universal community service, where everyone has to serve at least 2 years within going into some type of community service, that it would be a great learning experience during that time, from between high school and going into college.
I tell you what, it was a fantastic learning experience. And something I didn't mention is sometimes fate and destiny, or wherever you want to call it, the universe has a weird way of working things out. Remember that 5th year I told you about? Okay, so my first 2 years, I hated it. I wanted to get out, but that 5th year was the best year. That was when I really connected with and made the best friends. I took my best pictures. That was the year that everything sank in. It was like the universe was like, Erika, this 5th year is here for you for a reason. And if I didn't have that 5th year in the military, I wouldn't a lot of the life lessons I have today would not exist, because that 5th year was so critical in creating the person that I am today, and giving me the set of tools and knowledge I have to thrive. I don't think I would have the portfolio, or the connections, or the mindset that I would have today if it wasn't for that 5th year. But you're absolutely correct. I know Israel does something like that, but it really took me, and it gave me a different set of thinking skills. It made me think more logically about the world, about myself, about life, and the task at hand. And logic is a very interesting word, but we'll come back to that later on.
Yeah. And so where did you go? All right. So now you get out of the military, and now you have to decide, what am I going to do? Here you are. I got out of the military too. And as I was sitting there, okay, well, now what? What did you do when you got out of the military?
I won't lie, I was very excited to get out. I was sad. It didn't hit me until I packed up my car and I was heading back to Florida. My dad helped me. And then it sank in, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to miss this. I'm going to miss the adventure. I'm going to miss my friends. I'm just going to miss the military always looking out for me. I mean, there's a lot of bureaucracy and BS in the military, but at the same time, there's so much adventure, and you never have to worry, because you have this massive system that's looking out for you. It's like if I ever get an injury or something, it's got this amazing medical system that's always looking out for you. You never have to worry about all that. If I end up getting in trouble with they confuse me for somebody, or I accidentally get in a car wreck or something like that, I probably will get in trouble with the military, but I know they're there to pull me out of the situation and help me get grounded again very easily. I'm not on my own. anyways.
But you are now. You are all
Yeah,
right. So
so
now you're headed back to Florida. What is going through your mind as far as where you want to go? You've got these wonderful photojournalism and storytelling skills. You're really building this up as to who you are. How what goes next?
well, I wanted to reconnect and redo my younger self, and that's the reason why I went back to school.
Hmm.
So I decided to go back to school and in Orlando, be with my friends, and get my master's degree, in which I got my master's in business. And my idea was, I originally was thinking at the time, I would love to go and be back in some cool office designing somewhere where I have a lunch break and I'm getting paid so much more money. And at 6 o'clock, I get to go home and hang out with my friends and stuff like that. I want to enjoy that freedom and not worry about being deployed and being away from my parents and my loved ones for 6 months at a time. I was just so excited. I was in a state of euphoria for I was in this honeymoon phase for about 3 months. Like, this is so amazing. And I just appreciated the littlest things in life. Internet
Yeah.
was definitely one of them. And, just life has a weird way of working things out. I had a job waiting for me as soon as I graduated. And it wasn't a job I ever considered. I never considered teaching before. Never. Actually, funny, ironically enough, a contractor reached out to me and wanted to pay me a beautiful 6-figure salary to go to Afghanistan and do mass communications, like more specifically with video on the base over there. And I was about to do that. And this was during the time I was interviewing as well at the college. And one of the guys who actually runs the program over there, he's like, dude, you want to go to Afghanistan? Why do you want to do that? It's like, look at this. We got Skype over here. We got these beautiful windows. So, we got all this technology and we got cool cats around here who play the bass and are doing cool stuff. You're not going to have that over there. And then I started thinking about it, and it's just like, yeah, 6 months, it's like, the one thing we can't get back is time. And I'm not going to have time with my parents. It doesn't matter what amount of money that I'm going to have. I can't buy that time. And if I can't spend more time, I just spent 5 years of my life barely being able to see my friends and family. And I'm going to sit here and sell my, this short little thing that I have called time to be away from them a little bit more for money. And I started thinking about it. It's like, yeah, you're right. And I'm so happy I chose the route of education because, again, my life continuing with mentors, it really helped shape who I am today and gave me a whole entire appreciation for many different facets of life. It's so multifaceted, and it gave me so many wonderful connections. And the feeling that I get when students that I taught 10 years ago still message me on LinkedIn, just thanking me or just seeing how I'm doing is unbelievable. That's what I call karma. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So, today, here we are in 2023, Erica, and what does your life look like? How do those of us who follow you on TikTok and follow the work that you're doing, to see your videos, who see your video storytelling in this, what are the impetus and the ways in your life? Because I mean, I could talk to you for hours about this, and I want to be able to do that, but I want to know, what does it look like now, and what are the things that you're curious about and you're digging into now? Because as a teacher, one of the things that I see about you is that you are a learner. And I've never known any great teacher who was not a great learner. Like I've never known any great writer who was not a voracious reader. Those things go hand in hand.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, Dennis. Thank you. I believe teaching is one of the ultimate forms of learning. When I teach a subject, no matter how familiar I am with that subject, before I present it, I always have to go back and brush up on the fundamentals. There's sometimes, you know, just over time, because we are humans, sometimes things get a little crisscrossed in your brain. Maybe you're not pronouncing something right. Maybe you got the fundamentals wrong. Maybe you didn't connect it to something so incredibly basic. Maybe, you know, the standards just shifted just a little bit and you never were on top of that because you've been doing it for such a long time. So I think any good educator always has to go back and revisit the fundamentals. You know, in the case of the videos I create on TikTok, you know, it's not like I'm speaking like straight off the cuff of that. No, I have to go back and brush up on the fundamentals to ensure that everything is on point and accurate, because, you know, it's not only is it important to be incredibly accurate in what you're teaching, you know, at the same time, it's like you don't want to deal with the embarrassment of saying something that is incorrect and having, you know, a plethora of subject matter experts, you know, just bully you into oblivion and just make you not want to teach anymore. That's another problem. So yeah, brushing up on it is incredibly important. So I have been working here in New York as a storyteller, doing photography for brands. I've shot stuff that's ended up in Vogue magazine. I've done a ton of stuff with all these amazing Fortune 500 companies. And the problem is when I was younger, when I first moved to the city, New York, it was so fascinating to me, and it was so inspiring, just because I'm
It's
from
New
Florida.
York
I,
City. Are you
I,
kidding? This is a world headquarters of thinking and art and
right.
commerce. And I mean, you are right at the epicenter of it happening.
And I grew up in the woods. I grew up in such a small place in Florida that Summerfield, Florida, nobody even knew about at that time. And you know, here I am in New York City, you know, working in the advertising industry, you know, taking pictures, working with celebrities, being on TV, on television shows. It was all so fascinating, but over time, I started to see some cracks in this facade of this world I was living in. I started noticing narcissism was incredibly rampant, materialism was incredibly rampant. And I started to feel incredibly empty. I was successful at it, but I started to feel incredibly empty. I did not feel that satisfaction that I had when I was in the military, telling stories. For instance, like that photo that's right behind me
Mm.
of you know, a portrait I
God,
took of
she's
a woman who's in
beautiful.
Haiti. I did not feel the satisfaction I had when I was teaching. I did not feel like I was making the world a better place. But the problem is I've been there, done that. I want to do something different. It's just how my brain works. And just one day I was meditating and I was just like, okay, I love to tell stories. I love to teach. I love to simplify things. I love to learn. I love to do it in a beautiful way where I'm creating like videos and do it through photos using mass communications. Well, I can leverage this thing called TikTok and YouTube to maybe do that. And you know, it all started with one night where I just decided like to teach what a resistor is, how a resistor works. And then it sparked on me. It's like, you know, I want to do this series on TikTok and maybe possibly bring it onto YouTube, where I teach how a computer and electronics work from its most basic level, from the electron to the app. And I'm not going to teach everything. Of course, it would be impossible to teach everything. I'm not trying to create teach every single nuance. I just want to take the veil of mystery off of these very intimidating subjects and inspire my audience just enough to where they're going to be incredibly passionate about it, not feel overwhelmed about the subject, and they'll go and explore this subject even further thus further finding all those little tiny nuances and connecting the dots on their own. You don't want to give a student all the dots. You have to give them just enough dots to where they start connecting their own dots on their own. And then all of a sudden they're in their own discipline. They're now the future innovators who are solving the world's great crisis of today and humanity's great obstacles of tomorrow. Little by little by little, you don't overwhelm them. And, I do get comments from subject matter experts on TikTok who criticize me that, I technically said this wrong. I didn't say this correctly or something like that, or I missed something. Because their brain is so locked into what it is, and they've been in the discipline for so long that any methodology and thinking about it differently for a beginner is completely wrong to them. And that's the reason why a lot of masters of the craft are not really necessarily the greatest teachers.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's
Exactly.
they don't.
We're too deeply immersed in it to be able to see what are the areas that can actually give people access. That's one of the things that I love about your work, is that you give me access to the world. You help me to say, this stuff is understandable. This stuff, let's get it down to a way that I have a theory that I would like to do, that any subject that is worth understanding would be able to be explained in a wordle, 5 letters, words of 5 letters or less. So let's explain it to me in words of 5 letters or less. Then I would understand it in a way to be able to do it.
Yeah, and it's a form of logic where you're breaking things down to its most basic level. So that way, the problem with education that I've seen time and time again, from Harvard University all the way to a community college, down to your middle school classrooms and elementary school classrooms, is many subjects are taught not from the root, not from the trunk, but a branch. And students cannot connect the dots. But if you teach starting from the root, no matter how silly or basic it may sound, you allow your students or your audience to have a much deeper level of thinking about the subject. If they do not have the root knowledge of whatever that subject is, that's not a really healthy tree. You can't grow another tree from a root. It's not a great way of planting knowledge in their head. But if you start from the root, you'll have a much higher probability of growing a larger tree of knowledge inside of their minds, and thus helping them become more creative, which is another problem that we have, is creativity among analytical thinkers. And somebody who can easily solve problems outside of the box of constraints that we usually build for ourselves, and technical companies or government or certain crises around the world.
Absolutely. And it has to be, and I'm interested in that because that's a transrational process. When we think of, like what Einstein said, I didn't arrive at my understanding of the universe through my rational mind. So that means in the world of intuition, in the world of how do we connect with things that are outside of what we can put into the logic, how do you relate to like to intuition and inspiration and those things that are there that we can't quantify, but they're real and they're there, and you've mentioned it several times where you had this whisper, this intuition, that's what the sense of there's something greater that in some way, however the universe works, is part of this, or what I feel like is a very user-friendly universe.
Yeah, there is so much that we don't understand about the universe. And I think one of humanity's greatest handicaps, we'll just call it a handicap, is arrogance. we know that 2 + 2 = 4. That is knowledge. We can all agree on that. That is undisputable. However, speaking in a term of, for instance, what exists beyond this world, the big gap between gravity and quantum physics that we're trying to understand right now with black holes. When we speak in terms of absolute certainty about things that we have no evidence for, or very little evidence, to where we don't have all the dots to connect to actually, tell us a complete picture of what is going on, that is one of the greatest tragedies of human knowledge. And sadly, it doesn't just happen. We're seeing this happen a lot in politics and the news, but it doesn't just happen there. I mean, this happens on an academic level among the most notable researchers. I mean, something I've been really interested in studying lately is longevity. And I've been following a researcher at Harvard University named David Sinclair. And I've learned through him and other fellow academics who work in research, especially in science, it is brutal. It is war. You've got your fellow researchers who will gladly stab you in the back because they disagree with certain nuances or a little nuance in your study. And, it would make their day to see you lose your career. And, it's from the highest levels of academia and philosophy all the way down to the lowest levels of education. It's there, that absolute certainty and the uncertain.
Oh, that is awful. What a zero-sum game. What an absolutely, I don't think you could design something that would be less helpful.
Yeah, I think thankfully it's not all that bad. We have Aristotle to thank for this, and this is going to be one of the subjects I'm going to be covering about is logic. Logic existed before Aristotle, but it was Aristotle who created the logic of deduction and created this system that has gave birth to how we interpret the universe, how we interpret the world, how we built the computer. We can really say that Aristotle created the system that has made this computer that we're both having this beautiful Zoom conversation with possible. Because it branched and evolved over time and became binary logic. But his simple system of logic was there to tame this beast that was so out of control. What we talked about, create, absolute certainty and the uncertain. So he created this system to help handle that, to help handle humanity's arrogance. And it has done wonders for us. I mean, if you look at the landscape of humans as a whole from the beginning of society and look at how fast we've grown since that system was implemented, it is mind-boggling.
Erika, one of the things that I'm finding fascinating is it appears to me, because we have the industrial age and we have, the Stone Age, the fire and what we were, and getting into the industrial age and getting into the computer. It feels like that historians are going to look back at this particular time as we're getting into as a new leap, the fact that there has been an acceleration in both technology and in the evolution of the human consciousness as to what we believe. Something is happening right now. It feels like that we're right in the middle of it. What's your sense of that?
Like I have this Newton's cradle right here.
Yeah.
And I think this little tiny thing that hangs on your desk explains so much about the world, how physics works, how electricity works, and how we work as a society. Now, I don't have any academic papers or any evidence to back this claim up, But, it's like, we have history right here, which is potential energy. And then, bam, it hits these other little balls right here. And this would happen to be the future, the outcome, where we are going when this ball comes out over here and it comes back. But it's like, what's going on in the middle? If we can imagine this as the history of time, where are we in the present? What is going on? Well, I think what's going on is this ball is just about to hit. And the reason why I say that is because our form of communication is changing. Though even social media has changed so much. We're about to go into the realm of quantum computing. We're also about to enter a realm of, artificial intelligence is still in the wild, wild west. If we could imagine, compare it to the internet, we're in like 1996 territory,
Exactly.
but it's
We're
blowing our
still,
minds right
yeah,
now. If you look at OpenAI, their chat GPT, right, they call this protocol that's working right now GPT-3. And I believe that it has, I may be incorrect on this, but it has over 1 billion neural connections. GPT-4 is coming out, I believe, at the end of this year, and it's going to make GPT-3 look like a calculator compared to perhaps, a modern computer. That's how insanely good it's going to be. So yeah, something's big is going to happen within this decade. And what's going to happen because, something like GPT-3 and GPT-4, it's going to help us start achieving better programming standards, better research, and probably get us to the point with artificial intelligence. Because right now, artificial intelligence, it just does stuff. It's very narrow-minded. It's what we call weak AI. But it's going to get us very close to a point where we're going to have something called strong AI. And strong AI is something we could theoretically say that's AI that's self-aware. It can do anything. You can have it's almost as close to the movie Her, where you can have this amazing conversation with your computer and it'll do anything to help you with whatever task that you're trying to do. And it's going to be curious. It's going to have this hunger for learning more and connecting the dots. And isn't that what we all are as intelligent beings? It's just these little organisms that want to connect the dots and just
yes,
understand.
that's exactly it. So, all right, now, because because this week is International Women's uh,
Oh.
uh, International Women's Day, and this month is is Women's Month. I want to talk about, because so many of your mentors were men and are men, and we have. Could you talk about the gender dynamics within science and the gender dynamics of what you're doing? Because I'm finding my own sense is that the only way we're going to survive is by bringing women and having women and men at the decision making, and because I feel like having been, I'm 75 this year, and having been in the process, I realize that there are things about my gender that are very strong, that are very positive, and that we need this gender diversity in order to be able to have the communication, collaborative, synergistic skills. That's my point of view. So I want to know what your sense of this is.
Okay, well, I think kind of what's going on in quantum computing can explain a lot about this. There's a lot of brilliant women who are making quantum computing possible. Now, if you don't know already, classical computing, like the computer that's sitting in front of us, our Macintoshes, our Dells, our PCs, our iPhones, our Android phones, we call those all classical computers because they work off of digital logic or binary logic, which stems all the way back to Aristotle. And they're just really a bunch of dumb boxes that are on or off. It's 0 or 1. That's what we call binary logic. It's either true or it's false. Quantum computing is very different because it can look in between on and off, 0, 1. You know, it's
the gradient, the
yeah,
wonderful, that wonderful level between the zero. Oh, that's okay.
right,
Thank you.
right. And when you think about us as human beings, you could think of us as, you know, binary, like you know, a 0 or a 1. But I like to think of us, because we're so multifaceted in how we think, more as quantum computers, you know, and that can be us on an individual level, or it can be us as a society, as a civilization. Um, you know, it's, and you can look out, you can look through the history of time, and you can see that, you know, there are some men who, you know, they were not Viking warriors. They were not these types of, they were, you know, I could definitely say that a lot of the great scientific men who have brought us the modern science that we have were not going and doing CrossFit and had this, you know, like testosterone driven mindset that we call masculine. You know, a lot of their ways were very feminine. But at the same time, we've also seen many amazing female warriors and leaders throughout the course of history. So categorizing humans into like these binary logic systems, obviously that's not natural. It's not nature. And you know, there's a lot of argument. This can be a hot button debate amongst different political affiliations, but you know, the evidence is to the contrary. It's really difficult to categorize a human mindset, and I think it's really important that, because the way our society categorizes people, when we have more diversity among the genders and races and religions, this helps us overcome all these shortcomings of the systematic, crazy chaos that we've created, and helps us come out and innovate a little bit easier. I remember Alexander Hamilton did not want the capital of the United States moved to the Potomac River, or Potomac River. Gosh, I'm sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied. Anyway, so what we call Washington, D.C. today, his argument was New York City is a hub where there are so many people condensed all together. And that's how ideas are created. And it's when all these minds are coming together every single day, you get this thing called energy. You know, I cannot, if this ball is just all alone in the world, it can't connect to these other balls and, you know, create a state of movement. You know, it can't, we need connection as human beings. And the more we connect with each other, the more we grow as a society, the more we grow as individuals, and the more we grow as a civilization. And I couldn't agree with him more. It's actually pretty sad that we lost such an extent of time where our nation's capital, where government was made, was in a place where there wasn't that many people at one point in time for probably several decades. But eventually that changed, of course. But I couldn't agree with him more. It's very, very important that we connect with our fellow human beings, and not just one race, not just one gender, not just one religion, all types of human beings. And that's why I love, you know, New York City. I know we've got our problems with the rats and the subways and stuff like that, but when you look at New York City and you look at some of the minds that come here, I mean, when I was in Florida, I never met anybody who graduated from Harvard or Princeton or Columbia or Yale. It was just, you know, typically UF and FSU students. But when I came up here, I would just go to a bar or a restaurant, and all of a sudden I'm talking to, you know, scientists who are working at IBM, philosophers, people who work with Neil deGrasse Tyson every single day, folks who are helping solve a lot of the problems, you know, tons of Harvard graduates. And it's just, it's just mind-boggling, like how easily I connected with them. But it would not have been possible if I was not in this area. It would not be possible. And I hope that explains the question. I told you I go off on tangents here, but
no,
yeah.
it does. But the thing is, Erica, is that I want the opportunity. This is one of my joys is to be able to connect and to be able to see that I have met a curious mind. I have met a soul who is on a journey to self-actualization and learning and growing in that part, because that's what I'm simulating in myself. I want that same thing in me. I want to be able to continue to push the envelope of my art, of my curiosity, of the things that are going on. And that's what I see in you, and you're my model in that. And so I
Oh,
appreciate I so appreciate your willingness not only to do this, but to sit down in front of the blank page, which is a tremendous amount of courage to sit down to what I don't know and explore there and to continue to work there.
well, thank you. Yes, yeah, it's humility. It's probably a really. It sounds easier than actually practiced. I am wrong so many times, and just the older we get, the more wisdom that we have. And what is wisdom? It's really understanding that we know nothing at all, and that we should practice we should exercise humility and understanding that we should always be curious and just keep investigating, and learning more about the world. And I think the best way to learn, which we can circle back to the beginning, is you teach what you learn. And I know there's a system that many people recommend. They say you should have a mentor and you should be a mentor to somebody else. And that all comes down to one root thing, and that's connection. We're all connected. And the more we connect, the better as an individual we become, and the better the world becomes, because you connected with the world.
What a way. Beautifully landed. Thank you, Erika. Thank you for this. We're going to do this as a two-part. This is part 2 of a 2-part series that we'll be having and putting it up on Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation. Thank you for this time. Thank you for this opportunity to meet and to discuss and to experience you.
Oh, thank you so much, Dennis. I appreciate it. And thank you so much for having me on. And thank you to all of your listeners out there.
Absolutely. And we'll do that. All right. Thank you, everybody. And we will keep in touch. This is not the last time you will be seeing Erika on Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation, if I have anything to say about it. And we will. All right. And we'll be looking forward to seeing all of you next time.
Bye, everybody.
This episode of Reasonably Spontaneous Conversations has been brought to you in part by In Search of the New Compassionate Male. For more information, go to newcompassionatemale.com.